We are smart.
Hey, well met travelers. My name's Bob of the Old Ways. Thanks for stopping by my channel. If you're new here, I really appreciate it. If you're not new here, welcome back. Today, I know I kind of want to move beyond Rings of Power content, but my Christmas plans got canceled, so I'm bored, and I decided I'll do something I wasn't really planning on doing, and that's reacting to yet another person on YouTube complaining about the Rings of Power. I've had this content creator recommended to me by a couple of channel subscribers, some of whom are not sympathetic to him, and others who think he presents some kind of unbeatable challenge to me. And that's why I wanted to ignore him, because I'm really familiar with this kind of chud content, this kind of pack-led content, as I like to call it, and I would really like to move beyond it. But like I said, my Christmas night plans got canceled and I'm bored, so we'll see what we can make of this. Now, the content creator is named The Movie Cynic, and already the channel name is kind of, the channel name is why I didn't want to respond to this guy at all, because it's basically pulling the mask off here. With a name like The Movie Cynic, you know that everything he has to say is going to be taken or going to be made in bad faith right up front, because it's in the branding. To be a cynic, you have to be someone who believes or pretends to believe that humans are only motivated by entirely selfish interests, and that they do everything for selfish gain or for the promotion of like a personal agenda or something like that, because that's what cynics do. And cynics think that everyone else in the world thinks and behaves the way that they do. Their reasoning is, I interact with the world this way, so everyone else must interact with the world the same way I do. It's a way of universalizing one's personal experience. It's frankly kind of narcissistic. So maybe he should call himself the movie narcissist. But be that as it may, I have not watched this video yet, so maybe he will surprise me. But let's take a look at the Movie Cynic's video, which is titled Rings of Power, the Worst Show on Television. Here we go. Now, I can't promise that I'm going to get through this entire video, because as I now see, it's over an hour long, and I suspect I'm not going to have the patience to get through this nonsense, because it's going to be nonsense. That's my prediction. So, let's take a look at what the Movie Cynic has to say.
Rings of Power, the second season. Where does one begin? After episode 3, I described it as trying to find the best angle to stare at a bucket of piss. Now that the season's over, I must say that's a foolproof way of putting it. This show's so fun to slap around, it's like mixing UFC and Mario Kart. I didn't know I needed it.
We are smart.
Right, as I predicted. Okay, we can tell from the snarky tone, the clever turns of phrase, the meme editing, all of this. This is like Mauler adjacent. This is Critical Drinker adjacent. I am not optimistic, so.
What did Shooter McGavin say could draw a crowd? A golfer with his arm growing out of his ass? This show retains every single issue it had when the first season hit in 2022, and the newest argument for shithead shills is that it's not as bad as season 1. That's the argument?
No, that's not the argument. The argument is, first season was good, and the second season is better. Now, of course, these are subjective measurements. I love the show. A lot of other people don't like the show. Some other people are mid on the show. But I've done content on my channel before debunking the claim that nobody watched the show and nobody liked it. The ratings for season 1 were pretty phenomenal. It beat House of the Dragon every week on streaming that they were up against each other, except for one. And it experienced a massive surge in viewership at the end of season 1, after the final episode dropped, when a lot of people came in to binge the entire season from beginning to end, and that made it a top 4, I think it was a top 4 Nielsen show every week that it aired. And at the end of season 1, it was like, I think 49% higher, or it was 49 times more watched than the average show by I forget the metric I used, but my video's on my channel. You can check that out. So a lot of people watched this show, and a lot of people liked this show. So the argument is that season 1 was pretty good. It had some flaws, it had some pacing issues, but it was doing a lot of world building and setup. And season 2 is better because it started paying off those setups. Yeah, so let's keep going here.
And the crowd went mild. So what is wrong with it? Well, the second season continues to live off nostalgia for Peter Jackson's Lord of the Rings trilogy. It certainly doesn't like to reference the ass Hobbit movies. No, it sticks to the good stuff, because there's nothing like reminding an audience of something better than what they're watching. It's a shit rewrite of Tolkien's work with what feels like 8,000 characters who are either swapped out for versions ordered from Temu and follow the same essential plot threads from the Lord of the Rings, or they are made up for the show and have absolute...
Right. They're made up for the show. Okay, isn't this the crowd? I don't know the movie Cynic's content very well, but the people he reminds me of, Critical Drinker, Mahler, Nerdrotic, etc., their whole argument, their implicit argument, sometimes stated explicitly, is that storytelling is objective in the sense that it's based on a universal and ancient template that stretches across all of time and all culture and all races and so forth, that there are objective rules for storytelling, and people who violate these rules are engaged in an agenda, or I don't know, so trying to force their personal politics into a show or something like that. So why would such a person who believes such a thing be complaining that this show is following the storytelling template of its source material? You can't have it both ways.
absolutely nothing to do with the trilogy at all, making it a billion-dollar fan fiction. Need a Hobbit?
Incorrect. It has a lot to do with the original trilogy. Wait, let's back up. He said something about hobbits?
Well, they can't use those, so how about a Harfoot? Need Gandalf?
Yes, they can. They can use hobbits. They have the adaptation rights to The Lord of the Rings and its appendices, which means the word hobbit is free use. They chose not to use it. And they chose not to use it for a very good reason. The reason is this. The story in the Rings of Power is taking place in the early Second Age, before the existence of nations like Rohan and Gondor. Now, in universe, the word hobbit is derived from the language of Rohan. Rohanese, it's called. Or in Tolkien's notes, he says it's derived from a Proto-Rohirrim language. In other words, a language that was the precursor to the language of Rohan. And the language of Rohan is descended from Númenórean. The Númenóreans have not yet founded the colony of Rohan, which becomes the nation of Rohan, which develops the language of Rohanese. So the reason that no one in this show is using the word hobbit is because in universe, the word hobbit does not exist yet. The language from which the word hobbit is derived does not exist yet, because the nation that spoke that language does not exist yet. And this is just one example of the many, many ways that the Rings of Power engages with Tolkien's actual lore and Tolkien's actual themes, and these ways don't get noticed by clowns like the movie Cynic, because they're either being dishonest about the Legendarium, or their only exposure to and understanding of The Lord of the Rings comes from the fact that they saw the Peter Jackson movies when they were 12 and thought that it had awesome battle scenes or something like that. It's downstream of the phenomenon I've talked about many times in some of my other content about how so many critics of this show are beginning with the framing and themes of the Peter Jackson films and reading them backwards into the text of The Lord of the Rings, and then complaining when the show The Rings of Power is more faithful to the actual original themes and original framing of Tolkien than Peter Jackson's movies were. There's a reason that Christopher Tolkien, the son of J.R.R. Tolkien, hated Peter Jackson's movies, and why the Tolkien estate, generally speaking, has been unhappy with the Peter Jackson films since they existed. And it's because the Jackson films fundamentally changed the philosophical and religious themes and framing of the original story. Now, I happen to think that Christopher Tolkien and the Tolkien estate are being too hard on Peter Jackson's movies. The Jackson movies are brilliant and wonderful adaptations and are among my favorite films ever made. But it's important to understand that there is that fundamental difference between them. And The Rings of Power is engaging with and expressing in many, many ways Tolkien's original framing of the story and Tolkien's original spiritual and philosophical themes. And the problem is that folks like the movie Cynic only engage with Lord of the Rings content at the level of cinema, so they probably don't even understand the original text of the Lord of the Rings. I suspect many of them have never actually read it and are just getting their information from like wikis or other content creators. But I digress. We're like 1 minute into the movie Cynic's video here, and I'm already angry. So let's keep going and see if he improves his argument in any way.
Well, he shouldn't exist yet either, so how about the guy they call
All right, okay. Here we go again. Yes, Gandalf did exist, and in the history of Middle-earth, you will find some notations and suggestions by Tolkien that he did visit the many lands of Middle-earth before the Third Age, when the Istari are traditionally held to have first arrived in Middle-earth, right? So Gandalf did not always go by the name Gandalf, but that character existed basically since the beginning of the world. He's more or less an angel. He was there at the creation of the world. So yes, Gandalf does exist at this time, and there are suggestions in Tolkien's own work that he did visit other lands of Middle-earth before the Third Age.
Shit you not, a grand elf. Need a story? Well, the hobbits were friends with...
Jeez, I cannot believe how bad this is. Okay, the name Gandalf translates to elf with a stick. That's what it means. So don't come at me complaining about the grand elf thing. Tolkien just made goofy decisions sometimes. He was writing a fantasy story originally intended for children, right? So it should not surprise you that the show did something equally goofy.
With Gandalf, so why not pair the Harfoots with Grand Elf? Need dialogue? Why not gargle marbles and have an autist recall Frodo lines from memory?
What's the matter, smartass? You don't know any fucking Shakespeare?
The dialogue might be the most cringe in television history. Even if She-Hulk or The Acolyte is worse overall, this show is a disgrace to its source material with its faux Tolkien speak. Almost like the...
How the hell would you know? It's obvious to me. We're 1.5 minutes into this video, and as I said, you either have not read and did not understand Tolkien's lore, or you are simply lying about it. Okay? I don't know what people expect. Do you want the characters in a Lord of the Rings show to talk like they're from modern day America, or do you want them to talk in kind of elevated pseudo-Shakespearean language like they do in Game of Thrones? What are you looking for here? This is just a double standard. You would give a pass. I suspect Movie Cynic here would give a pass to this kind of thing in a show that he liked, or that a show that he and his algorithm chasing buddies have decided they're going to like say House of the Dragon. The language there is doing the same thing, and it's written in the same tone as Rings of Power, but you have decided for arbitrary algorithm reasons that Rings of Power has to suck and House of the Dragon has to be good. You have to take a side, so you're going to operate with a double standard. Again, living up to your name, the movie Cynic, which means you're going to approach everything in bad faith. Nothing we're seeing this guy say in this video should be taken in good faith. It's all lies done for algorithmic engagement. We're 1.5 minutes into his video. I don't think I'm going to make it to the end. This is really bad, man.
The show absolutely hates the creator of the sandbox the writers are playing in. The dialogue...
All right, see, there we go. More. Oh my gosh. Okay, again, the claim that this show, the creators of the Rings of Power, hate Tolkien cannot be substantiated. And maybe I'll go through and I'll put in some links to videos and interviews and stuff demonstrating that the creators of this show know more about Tolkien's lore than anyone who is complaining about the show on YouTube, or anyone who's defending the show on YouTube, including me, right? These guys know the lore backwards and forwards. They understand Tolkien's fundamental philosophy better than the movie Cynic or Mahler or Critical Drinker or Nerdrotic or Disparu or Shadiversity or any of the other pack leads, okay? I have videos on my channel where I explain the ways that the Rings of Power is engaging with Tolkien's spiritual and religious themes far better than the Jackson movies did, or far more deeply than the Jackson movies did, I should say. I don't think Rings of Power is better than the Jackson movies or vice versa. I like them equally, but they are doing different things. And one of the things Rings of Power is doing differently is that it is engaging with Tolkien's genuine religious beliefs in a way that the Jackson films did not. So we're 1 minute, 35 seconds into this, and it's just been nonstop nonsense.
Redeemable. It's hard to say the cast is awful. I mean, they're definitely awful in this show, but I don't know if they're adding calories to this mukbang because they hired essential unknowns for the majority of the roles. The acting in this
Okay, again, what do you want? If you hire essentially all famous people, that's going to drive the budget of the show way up, right? TV shows and TV series is traditionally a way that up-and-coming actors break into the mainstream. It's how they become famous. It's how they get well-known. It's how they get more work. Hiring lesser-known actors is a time-honored, a tried-and-true television practice. How many people in the cast of Game of Thrones were incredibly famous when that started? Arguably Sean Bean. Not many other people. I mean, go to any TV show, look at the first season, and see how many of those people were famous at the time. What do you want, bro?
show absolutely sucks because the actors, good as they may be, have an idiotic script they have to work with. The characters are absolute dumbasses whose motivations change at the whim of the plot. Adar hates the elves and wants them dead, until he doesn't and wants peace. Celebrimbor...
Okay. See that right there? That's a great example of how dishonest these people are. He gave a bullet point description of Adar's character arc without filling in the connective tissue. The story of Adar is the story of salvation by grace. Right? He's the leader of the orcs. He chose the path of evil, and through his interactions with Galadriel, he comes into contact with Nenya, the ring of adamant that she has been wearing, and he wears it and it heals him, and he has a change of heart through no action of his own. He was saved by grace, and in return, or as a result of that, he decides to extend the hand, the olive branch, if you will, to Galadriel, and Galadriel learns her moral lesson for season 2. Adar was basically the mirror, the dark mirror of Galadriel for this whole thing, and to describe it in this bullet point fashion dismissively is a great demonstration of how dishonest these people are, because it shows that they're not really engaging with the text of the show or any of its deeper themes. They're looking at this like an engineering project. If it follows a certain blueprint, then it's good. If it doesn't follow the blueprint, then it's bad, and there's no room for flair or nuance or anything like that. This guy just fundamentally doesn't understand how television or cinema work. He doesn't understand that dialogue is not the only thing telling the story here. It's also the visuals, it's also the music, it's the costuming, it's the pacing. Everything is a narrative element, and if you cannot incorporate all of those elements into your analysis and focus only on dialogue and only on character actions, you're just not ever going to truly understand any piece of visual media.
Gets tricked by dad joke level cliches. Not Gandalf, who's revealed as Gandalf through the bullshit mystery box style storytelling popularized by the show Lost, is the equivalent reaction to rat poison. As in, no shit, just kill me. This guy's entire story arc this season is walking around utterly fucking bewildered going, ah, and he finds a stick like he's in Harry Potter looking for a wand compelling. Let's stretch that through an entire season. But fear not, they have 20,000 other characters to divert off to and bore you with. This show has way too many stories happening all at once, and it would be different if they didn't all suck shit. Now let's get into the episode breakdown of this part of the compilation series, my personal favorite thing to do.
So we're going to skip the ad and move up to his take on episode 1, and I don't think I'm going to get much farther than this. This is real. It's just okay. Let's give him a shot. Let's see what he says.
We start with a 3+ minute recap of season 1, just in case you forget how ass it was.
Your people have no king, for you are him.
He is him. The real season starts as a flashback, right before Sauron meets Galadriel in the middle of the ocean. You remember that bullshit, right? Well, Sauron's hanging out just chilling with the orcs, looking like the guy Ed 209 killed in RoboCop. Seriously, look. Since this show is not Lord of the Rings by consensus, he is therefore not Sauron. So please indulge me with some nicknames as we proceed through this fisting affair. So Sauras is giving a speech trying to get the orcs on his side. He does this by telling them everyone thinks they're pieces of shit, from elves to dwarves to humans, and to prove this, he stabs one to death. See, he thinks you're a piece of shit too, but you know, he's a benevolent prick. Head orc turd Adar goes to crown him and he's like, "Gotcha, bitch!" and gives him the old right there Fred. Soras is like, "No one makes me bleed my own blood." And Prometheus goos himself all over the place. Yes, he turns into Venom for a second and escapes via rat before stumbling upon a group of travelers he'll wind up in the ocean with. He joins them after hearing some faux Tolkien dialogue about how to be good, and wham, we get to see how...
Okay, no, that wasn't faux Tolkien dialogue. That was expressing one of Tolkien's religious themes. Evil and good are choices that we make. They're not inherent to anyone. Nothing is evil in the beginning, as Elrond says in the book version of the Fellowship of the Ring. Not even Sauron was so. And by the way, nothing is evil in the beginning was the first line of dialogue or narration that we ever hear in this show. So again, this is just an example of someone cynically going through the show, making bullet points of dialogue, and not making any effort at understanding what the story is trying to say, or explore, excuse me, or exploring the ways that it engages with the themes of the source material.
How Sauron ended up meeting Galadriel in the middle of the fucking ocean. Thank God we know, now it's not coincidental stupidity. The story
It wasn't coincidental stupidity the first time either, okay? It was divine providence. This is established in the text of the show. I'll play a clip, I'll edit in the clip of Galadriel expressing this very idea. She isn't the only one, but in her case, in the case of her and Halbrand, she is the one who expressed the idea.
Ours was no chance meeting. Not fate, nor destiny, nor any of the words men use to speak of the forces they lack the conviction to name. Ours was the work of something greater. You must see it.
Multiple characters throughout season 1 and season 2 express the idea that divine providence is at work, that God is the ultimate mover of everything good that is happening in the show, that God has a plan and events are unfolding as he laid it out. That's straight from Tolkien, baby.
finally gets going in this hour-long slog when we meet back up with Galadriel. Let's dive into this banger dialogue, shall we?
Okay, we're getting the Galadriel thing. I think I'm done with this. I don't want to turn this into like a 3-hour piece of content, okay? Galadriel, I think, is one of the dumbest insults that the Pack-Leds came up with for this show, because I think that the Galadriel name, more than anything else they say, betrays how badly they understand Tolkien, right? Tolkien himself essentially said she was Galadriel. Her mother name is Nerwin, which means man maiden, and she was given that name because she was tall and strong and the equal of the greatest athletes and lore masters of the Eldar. And in Tolkien's work, the lore masters are great warriors. Galadriel was their equal. Nerwin was her name, her mother name, which means man maiden. In Tolkien's letters, he describes her as having an Amazon disposition. She went with Celeborn in the end of The Return of the King to Dol Guldur and tore down the walls and laid bare the pits. Right? So when you say that Galadriel, and when you derisively and refer to Galadriel in Rings of Power as Galadriel, and you think you are insulting her, you think you're insulting the intelligence of the showrunners, you're just displaying that you don't know anything about Tolkien, and the showrunners know better than you do. The depiction of Galadriel in the first season of Rings of Power is entirely consistent, 100% all the way down with the way Tolkien wrote her backstory. The details have been changed for TV adaptation, but the spirit of the character, the portrayal of her as a warrior, is completely consistent with everything Tolkien wrote about her. And if you don't understand that, you don't understand Tolkien at all. This is just incredibly dishonest. And I'll say this again as well, as I've said multiple times. The grift here, the trick here that Movie Cynic is relying on is one that everyone else in this crowd relies on. They're operating under the assumption that you are supposed to like Galadriel in season 1 of The Rings of Power, and you are not. All of the things they bring up about her, she's annoying, she's bullheaded, she's obsessed, she's bossy, all of these things that they list out as character traits that represent the showrunners not knowing how to build a character. These things are features. You're supposed to notice these things. You're supposed to think these things are bad. And you're supposed to wonder what in the hell happened to her. Where is the Galadriel we know from the Third Age? How does this woman, who's so clearly broken and flawed and misdirected, how does she become the Lady of Light thousands of years later? You're not supposed to like her. You're supposed to wonder what the hell is wrong with her. And if you follow her character arc in season 1, you see immediately, if you understand how cinema works, which the Movie Cynic does not clearly, how that plays out. At the end of season 2, she's another step along the path closer to the character we're more familiar with. It's not a coincidence that she begins season 1, wearing armor and being a warrior, and at the end of season 2, she has visually anyway, laid down her sword and armor and begun wearing the white robes we more commonly associate with her in the Third Age. She is going to become the Galadriel we're familiar with. I can't go any further. I'm not going to subject myself to 1 hour or more of this garbage. So, just, The Rings of Power is a good show. And it engages with Tolkien's themes in a lot of ways. And people who don't understand that, people like the Movie Cynic here and the rest of the Pack-Leds who generate constant outrage and rage bait content about it, are just lying to you. It's important that you understand that. The Movie Cynic here did us the favor of putting that into the brand of his channel. By calling himself the movie Cynic, we know that everything he says is going to be a lie. And it baffles me that anybody is fooled by this. So anyway, if you like this kind of content, encourage me by giving me a thumbs up, subscribe to the channel, hit the bell for notifications so you can be told when I upload new videos, and stay tuned for cool things coming in the future. I'm working on a video essay about the TV show The Chosen and why it doesn't suck. And I've got a collaborative project coming up in the future with some other content creators. So stay tuned, watch this space for more content, and until next time, remember that what's best in life is to crush your enemies, see them driven before you, and engage in discourse with the women. Thanks for watching.